in 21 years. So I was a 2000 graduate, mechanical engineering, and came back a couple of times, and then never came back after 2002, I think, or 3. So it's great to be back, and a lot has changed, of course, but I'm going to meet my professor. He's still there after lunch. I know we have an hour. I want to make the best use of this time for you guys. So I think the best use would be more Q&A and dialogue and questions. I had some sessions earlier today. It's best you can shoot off all your questions about your startups. How many of you are entrepreneurs already or have a startup? Great. How many of you are thinking about a startup but haven't acted on it? Great, great. So my story is interesting because I thought about my startup for a long time and never acted on it. There were 2 or 3 side hustles which didn't work out. Eventually I gave up on a startup idea, and then I started my company in 2015. So I had 15 years of corporate life. Then I did my entrepreneurship. Very different from what I see here. I see here people who are already working on startups or launched companies, revenue, and they have no plans to do corporate. It is great, but 15, 20 years ago, that wouldn't happen, right? So my plan is to tell you about Enact, but before I go there, I wanted to tell you the journey of how we got to Enact, which is an interesting story, which I hope will help you guys as you navigate your journeys through your formation. When you pick an idea, do you take every idea to market? Which ideas need to go to market? I think that'll be an interesting story. And then I want to tell you a little bit about Enact. I think it's good for you guys to see what we do. And then I'll tell you all the learnings. I don't need slides for that. And I'm on camera and YouTube, so I'll tell you as much as I can on all the mistakes we made, things we could have done better, and on some of the successes we did, which is unconventional. And that's the plan. Right, Matt? Is it a good plan? So my journey, as I look back, so 2000 I graduated, a little bit about my background. I'm a mechanical engineer from India. I came here to study, like some of you. And my master's was in industrial mechanical engineering, manufacturing. And then I worked in the automotive industry for about 7 years. Great experience, manufacturing product, but not so exciting when you're an entrepreneur at heart. You're trying to build new things. So I kept moving within the company, trying different products, different functions. It was a great way to learn. And then I quit, went back to school, got my business degree, and that was, I think, the turning point for me, because product ideas which I had, and there were some that I tried, wasn't really ready for a business around it. So I'm sure you face this sometimes. You have a great idea. Are you ready to quit for that idea and build a business? That's where I struggled. So I never quit the day job until I think 2006 I had an idea, tried it for a couple of months, didn't work out. And then after business school is when I felt it really changed. And then I got lucky, I got a job that took me to Europe for 3 years. And it was there that I discovered solar, because in 2009, the German government was subsidizing solar. So you'd see them everywhere, like villages, if you go for a drive, 40% of homes have solar. And I came back for a vacation to California, and there was nothing, like barely any. 2009 was like nothing. So that was like the turning point for my career, because I felt like, okay, here's a new industry. I've done one. And so let's switch to an industry which is new and growing. The struggles with automotive was that it's hard to start a new venture in a very structured, capital-intensive industry. Where would you start, right? But not for solar. Solar was much more open then. So I quit my consulting job, joined a solar company in Munich, which was not super big, but public. And I learned my ropes in the solar industry for 3 years. And they put me on a very exciting project, which is to launch a division in the US. So for me, that was the perfect career opportunity. So I didn't have to raise any money. There was no investor on my back, and was funded by corporate. And they said, let's build sales and distribution in the US from 0 to X. And we did that, and was very successful in the early days of the industry, where it was probably like $500 million a year of addressable market. And so that to me was the first chance as an entrepreneur, and I felt really good. I felt like that was the next thing for me. So then in 2014 I quit and became a first-time founder, like some of you who are literally starting with zero. And the journey of Enact came about. My co-founder was also from my college back in India, who went to my bachelor's in India with me. We had kept in touch. And interestingly, he too had gone through a lot of stints and ended up in solar in a different country in India. And so like when we met at a conference, we were like, okay, this is what we need to do, what do you think? And he said, yeah, this is exactly what we need to do. So the vision, mission was pretty quick, because we were from the industry, we'd seen the motions, we saw the opportunity, and so I think that really helped us build the product right quickly. Doesn't have to be that way. I think it's not the only way to get to a good outcome, but I feel like if you have that type of a background, you shorten the product market journey. You may have no background in industry, it's a little harder, because you have entrenched players now in every space, so you have to think through that. Who could be a future competitor? What could be the next alternative to your business? But if you know an industry well, it's so much easier to launch a new product which you think can last all the way to $1 billion outcome, right? That's the hard battle. So let me tell you a little bit about Enact, and I'll use some slides. This will be good for you guys to know what we do. So our mission at Enact is to transform the end customer journey. So like think of an end customer being a homeowner or a building owner. It's really not the government or the utilities, or so solar has a lot locally who are putting solar on their buildings, and that's a big business. Globally, it's about 140 billion. US is about 10 billion. So you see on these, the US market is about 4 million people. Homes have solar. It's going to go to 10 more million. So it's in the 10 billion addressable revenue. It's not small, but when we started, it was like 1/10 of this. So the strategies and the success we've had are now coming to fruit because the market is bigger, right? When we started, it was much smaller. The problem we solve is solar is a construction project. So you're going to have panels, inverters, structures shipped from like maybe 3 different countries through a distribution channel. It shows up magically on your home one day because you signed a contract 2 months ago, and the city has to approve it, the utility has to approve it. The people who build it are local companies. There's like 5,000 solar companies in the US. So they need to know how to build something, basically a power plant on your home, safely, and then give a warranty for their work for 10 years. If anything goes wrong, that's California, 10-year wrap. Plus, service the project for 25 years of equipment warranty. So it's a very difficult project. In spite of that being difficult, you have 4 million homes who have it. There is no place to get it, right? You can't go to Home Depot. There's no retail infrastructure. For me, especially coming from automotive, where we have dealerships, here we have a new industry with no dealerships. You can't buy it. Even mattresses, we were talking about this at dinner, a mattress sale is an expensive sale, but there's a place to go and touch it. And then it ships to your house. You can't touch solar anywhere unless it shows up on your home. So the whole problem is how do installers deliver these projects? What are their challenges? It's a tough construction project. How do you estimate right? How do you deliver right? That's one problem. And even if that's solved, the buyer has no way of measuring outcome other than some monitoring app. So we decided to attack the problem with a platform. And I think I'll show you just one good picture of how our platform looks. This is our platform. So on the left, it's a two-sided platform, right? On the left is the software which is used to design projects. So you can take any building in the world with the image of the satellite or drone or whatever. You can accurately lay out a project in minutes. So literally in 5 minutes, you can come up with an offer, which is not just a picture. It has the model numbers, pricing, rate, savings, a lot of these details that make it accurate. And it's not used by Enact, it's a SaaS. So the user can be anyone. And that leads to the proposals and the outcomes. We track them. So we talk to every manufacturer that's on this platform through our cloud APIs. And then we measure the outcome on the app. So any questions on this? You guys get this? I'm just curious.
I've got one.
Go for it.
Are you connected via API with the vendors so that you have accurate current to date pricing? We all know that battery costs are dropping 30% annually. Solar cell costs, you know better than I do, are dropping annually. So every few months, the prices on these solar cells is changing. Is that dynamically connected to all the vendors?
Yes and no. So you're absolutely right. The country pricing even differs, right? So the reason, let me back up a little bit to answer your question. The project of a solar on a home, let's say it's $20,000, right? Only about 40% of the 20 is hardware. The 60% is non-hardware, right? There's labor, soft costs, customer acquisition, sales. So there's a lot of variability from one offer to the other. I'm sure you might have seen it for those of you who are buying solar. You might get a bid for X and a bid for 1.2X, different equipment. So you're buying, what am I buying? Why is that? It's almost like mattress shopping. There's no basis for a number, right? And then one guy says it's going to be 5-year payback, another says 7-year payback. It's a $20,000 purchase. How would you decide all of that? And what's the basis of the data? I think that's the question. So there is no industry pricing database. There is no API for any vendor. It's all over the place. But there's one big advantage we have is the users who use our software, we have a pricing module. So we know on an aggregate basis what's happening in New York versus California. And that we share as a report saying, well, last 12 months, we see this is the trend, right? And some other platforms are doing that too, like Energy Sage has done a great job of doing that. But that's just the US. If you go outside the US, there's really no platforms out there that do this. So I think the US is still leading the software-led space. But does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So yeah, any other questions on this? I just want to pause and see.
Yeah, so what types of data do you provide to providers? Is it here's your, let's say, 100-acre property with 10 homes, and then within this orientation, you would be able to generate this much electricity if you deployed this type of solar. Is it this level of data? Or
yeah, it's that, but a lot more detailed. So if you have a building, it's a warehouse, we give you, this generates a proposal where you can, as a developer, go and sell the contract based on our numbers, pricing, ROI, savings, right? And then we go all the way to the other side. After the project's built, we measure live for 25 years, and we show it to you that what we said is right. So we can't just make up stuff. It is based on the data of past projects, weather, performance of the hardware. So what we say will happen has to be close to what is actually going to happen. And the more we do it, it's a closed loop, right? There are other solar proposal software companies that existed before we started that. They're really good at designing the thing, but not getting into the numbers. And we thought it's incomplete. So our whole mission was, how do you make it complete? If I'm a buyer, if my car gives me, 25 miles per gallon, what does my solar give me? Is it a 6-year payback? And why isn't the provider telling me that in clear terms? Okay, your savings is X, your payback is Y, and we'll stand behind those estimates because it's an investment, right? That's the answer.
And in this case, in the US, will project developers fall under the category of providers?
Yes.
Or
Project developers. Now in the US, about 7,000 developers, 5,000 of them do homes. And then about a few hundred do commercial industrial. And then you have utility scale too, big stuff. We don't work with the utility scale because that's a whole different game. You have 2 years to build it. So the speed of a software is not as important as many other factors. But we work with the building sector where you need to have proposals in minutes because the buyer is deciding in days or weeks. Right, Matt, you have a question?
Yeah, it's part of the install on every one of the projects that goes through Enact involve a piece of IoT that provides its data back to you.
Great question. So, and I'll talk about the pivots we made. And we decided not to have any hardware on Enact because every solar company installing solar has some equipment. All the major brands have an IoT cloud. And so there was no need for one more. Instead, we partnered with the IoTs of all the major brands, connected with them, and they're happily sharing the data with us with some pricing and agreements. And so we decided to stay out of the hardware, and that really worked in our favor because now we can deploy the app. For example, we can come, I'll tell you about the business model next, but we have customers who come here to our website and say, I already got my solar 3 years ago. It's not doing what it's supposed to, can you tell us? Right? So the journey may not start from the beginning and go to the end. This may be the beginning of the next project. This is the whole cycle. And so the business model really is about, I want to skip some of the product stuff, and we can talk about it later. The business model is really the whole customer journey, right? This is the fun part. So we actually onboard installers across the US and many other countries. We now, in the US, directly service the end buyer with any questions on their solar, any questions on their financing of it. Some don't want to invest, some have lenders, and then help them on that journey to make a decision. But we can't install your tech platform. So we have partners, installers using Enact, who we call preferred partners. Think of them as Uber drivers who now win a project because we know them, they know Enact, we have seen their work, we rate their work, so it's like a two-sided game. And then they win the project to install it. Whatever they install, we measure on our app, and we rate the install as well, and it's all scored. And that's creating what we call the Uber platform, where once you are as a homeowner coming to us, we show you in your city who are the 5-star, who are the 4-star, and so on. It's scaling because solar is done best by local companies, local contractors. It's very hard for, let's say, a state college installer to really do it well in Philadelphia because you have trucks, you have people. So the best companies are local, and so the platform is working. I think you had a question.
Yes, so I like solar because of the novelty behind it, like when it came out.
Yeah.
And so as I've bought houses, rent them out in my free time, I've always thought, well, about solar. But my problem is I'm equity driven, and solar doesn't add equity to a property, it's just an added cost.
Mm-hmm.
So like near term, how do you justify the upfront cost until you get past that financing to a customer like me, where it's like I'm equity driven and a novelty isn't worth to me?
Yeah, you live here, right, in Pennsylvania?
Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach. So where I live in California, the investment of solar is a 18% return, which we measure and prove to you with our app. Because the differential between the grid price and the cost of solar is about like 15 cents a unit, so you can do the math. Like you save enough to justify the investment. I wouldn't call it an equity. I would say it's a cost avoidance, which leads to a return on your investment. It's not as good in Pennsylvania. You may be like at 10% IRR, and maybe 9-year payback, right? But all across the eastern seaboard, it is just like California. So like the states that do well are California, the Northeast. It's not only sunshine, like I've often been asked that, well, it's so cold here and it's cloudy, how do you think it'll work? Germany has no sunshine, hardly any, right? That's where it started, because it's light, the photoelectric effect, you need light, and you need high electricity costs from the grid. So wherever the grid price is above 13 cents, which is like 15 states in the US, it's a great payback. Like 9 years is also not bad. It's better than the CD in the bank, right? And what's the risk of it? Other than warranties which are covered, the sunshine, right? So you're betting on the sun, on the cycle, right?
Can I ask him a question? Are you buying your properties and holding them, or are you mostly like living?
Holding.
You're holding, and do you pay the utility costs? Okay, so that's the difference. He's not paying the utility costs, so it's
Yeah,
it
if
is
you're
an
not,
option for you.
if you're not paying the utility cost, you have no ROI.
Yeah.
So that's, sorry, I should have asked you the question. So I think, let me come back to, I think we can spend a whole hour just on Enact, but I feel like that's not the purpose of today. I want to take a step back, and now that you've heard a little bit about Enact, I would rather focus on the journey of how we build it, all the challenges we face, and probably pick 2 or 3 areas to address which will help you guys on your journeys, and hopefully it adds value. And if you have any questions, just interrupt me. This is meant to be a discussion. So I think the first topic I want to talk about is the product market fit. I've heard some good ideas today, earlier, last night. No idea for a new business product is bad or weak. There's always potential. The question is, are you interested in building a business which is going to, let's say, 0 to 10 or 0 to 100? And how important is it for your business to be a bigger business? Obviously, bigger is better, but not necessarily. Like every business can't be $1 billion business, right? And it's perfectly fine if you have an idea that takes it to a $10 million or $50 million revenue. Nothing wrong with that. I personally feel like all business ideas are equally valuable because you can create employment, you can create IP. It doesn't have to be a VC-funded business to be a real success story. However, I'm sure there's some VCs in the room. Matt's just left. There's always more excitement if you have a 10x or 20x growth. So we'll talk about the fundraise topic, but back to the product market fit. In our case, we launched a product. You saw what we did. It took us many years to do the two-sided platform. We started with the design software first because we had no money. And me and my co-founder, we had a small team. We said, let's just get the first 100,000 revenue with a minimum viable design software. Let's get as many users on it to show the traction, and then we can convince ourselves that this is worth doing more on. And it worked. So we did that. As I told you before, we had a good alignment. We launched a product in 9 months. We sold subscription in 3 or 4 states. And we saw that, yeah, it's beginning to work. People like it. And then you really find out what you need to build. And we found out there are 3 other competitors. They have so many more features than we had. It would take us a couple of $1 million to really catch up with them. And that would mean giving up a chunk of equity pretty early on, and the outcome may not have been where we are today. So we decided that instead of competing head to head, we pivoted and said, let's improve the product to be better than what we are now, but not fighting the best, and instead go international to countries where there is no product for this. So we were the first US one. There are 4 competitors we have. We were the first that went out in 2017, 18, 19, into markets where our competitors did not have any other offering. Same tool, just a little change. The currency, the electric rates. It was a data problem. The same product, same Amazon cloud, but customized for a country. So that pivot worked. because that got us revenue faster than what we would have gotten just by doing the US. And then we got our SaaS investor funding, and then from that, we improved the product, we caught up with the US competition, and then came COVID. So during COVID, what happened is people were at home. Their bills went up, right? And when you're, and you can't visit them anymore. So if you're a salesperson, installer, you cannot then go home to home and sell, which was the traditional way. So the need for digital went up. So we saw increase in the subscription sales. And because we were in so many markets, all the markets had pretty much the same trend. And the other thing that happened is people started doing Zoom calls. So because we had a pretty good visual interface, the Zoom calls, they started using our product to show their numbers and designs. And that was a very nice outcome for us. So that led to our growth. And finally we got to a Series A level by 2022. But there was one more pivot along the way. And that was, if you do the addressable market, all the countries we are in, now we're in 35 countries, all this installer users, right? The revenue would be probably 300 million from a subscription. So we knew that to get to that $1 billion story, and Matt just talked about the bonds $1 billion versus 100 million. So to get to that $1 billion story, we realized that you have to have a hook on the homeowner side. You can't just have the subscription B2B, it has to be two-sided. So that was the big pivot we made in 2020. We launched the app. It's painful because it was a new product before Series A, and the same team, so we had to hire more resources. And that led to the subscription of, so now we have thousands of homes who use it, but we had to get to 100 first. It's almost like a second product market fit. We get them to pay for that product and then distribute it through our installers. We don't go home to home, so B2B2C, which has now become big for us. And that took us to the revenue hockey stick that a Series A investor is looking for. And it makes the numbers. So the product market fit then was not about the product alone. It was also the market, timing, pricing, the series of mistakes we made along the way, we had skipped because we had some features which were good for international or for the US. So there's a lot of these things that you do which are probably more important than the product itself. And in hindsight, if we had done some of those faster, we would have been 2 years quicker to where we got to be. So business model and business market fit. Luckily, our product works for all the countries, but I've seen that a common problem that not all products can go international. So that would have meant we would have never had Enact because just the US wouldn't have carried us, right? And now we're at a point where the US will carry us, but then we got the product funded by international customers, right? And the international customers always said, oh, you must be the best thing because the US, Americans are using it. But that's not true, right? We actually now see more users, the growth is faster in new markets than the US. So that's a very classic SMB software story. It's the same I've heard from large enterprises that the international users often are more productive on software. So product market fit is important, but the business model iteration, the sooner you can do it, I think it's faster for you, faster for the, and your investors, right? If you iterate too much in the business model, then you spend extra years. So that was our first learning. Any questions on that, product market fit? I'm sure you guys have challenges there, or not? Oh, good. So then let's talk about the next topic, is fundraise. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So in the very initial stages, did you build the platform first for the providers,
Yeah.
or for the
providers? Yes. We got to thousands of providers, even outside the US, before we even do the US California app. And now we're again doing the same motion. The providers get the app. So now the app is in California. We've already done a couple of international markets. So it'll go through the providers, right?
And one question is like, if you provide the software to a provider, so there are several homes within that, let's say, developer.
Yes.
And so is the transaction then happening between homeowners and the provider, or whom is the?
Oh, that's a great question. So after A round, which was 2022 August, 18 months ago, once we have critical mass on both the sides, users, subscription, with the new money, and we raised 10 million, we started testing marketplace. Because you have the user, the seller, if we match the two, then there's a market maker. So that is the last pivot I didn't talk about, which is the last 18 months. And it's working great. But that's only in certain urban markets where we can do it. So only in parts of California, parts of the East Coast, we have a team, a sales team, that actually talks to a homeowner and matches them to an installer, and we have a referral fee, right? But that's the smallest reach of Enact. It can become very big, but without the platform, there is really no marketplace, right? Because we have to have an installer in a country, then we have to have the app working in the homes, and then we start doing the matchmaking. So does that answer your question? Question of the project?
Yeah.
So the Uber model is like 18 months old, and that has to scale to take us to the next level, which is where we all want to get to, right? That's the outcome. But as far as fundraise goes, you can see how complex this platform play was. We started our company maybe 3 years before the market was ready for it. 2015 was probably not the right time. 2018 would have been better. We would have hit COVID and have got the same outcome. So we were a little early. So we had to go and raise one angel round. And I must say that was the most transformative round for us, even more than our Series A. It was not the amount, but the investors who we could raise from, they were all from the solar industry. Nobody that I knew before except professional acquaintances. No family, there was no family money. And I think that was really good because we got access to the market, we got financial advice, and I'll tell you about the mistakes too, but it was really helpful for us. And then we got an early stage SaaS investor, 250K, and then we got another one, and then we got a Series A. I feel like a lot of startups often skip the angel round because they get a large check, the $5 million A round or something like that. I've seen that, but I don't know if that's necessarily the thing because you're probably skipping a phase of discovery where you're constrained on capital. You're forcing yourself to choose and do it right. And I'll tell you what our competitor, which is also, we have several. One of them exited along the way, and they had a decent outcome. The other one, they announced 25 million A round, 50 million B round, 200 million C round, and then even a D within 2 years, all through COVID. 500 million, simply, right? Great product, great product. Their product is still in many ways better, right? But the team grew to like 700 people, and we're still not 70, right? So when you have that type of money, the good thing is you can build it better, but can you scale it to a valuation? It justifies that raise. Is the market ready for that type of a growth? And the answer is it wasn't, right? So the founders have now left. It's a re-up, right? So money may not be sometimes a good thing. If you're looking at growth, smaller checks keeps you disciplined, I think, versus a big check, which makes you feel like you try new things and may not work, right? That was some advice. Yes, a question?
So when you started with writing software for providers, right? How big was your team back then? Was it just you or?
It was 6 people for a whole year and a half.
Okay.
And so we had some really good early employees in India.
Okay.
We couldn't have done it without an offshore model, by the way.
Okay.
Another complexity. I'll talk about that. Yes, and that was really helpful for us. Later we hired US team members. Even till today, like half our team is offshore, including product engineering. And now we have some in other countries too.
Okay. And you build a hook for homeowners, basically. That's very different from your product itself, right? Like it's on the same lines, but it's quite different. So, so why was raising Series A necessary, and was that the only reason to build that hook?
So our whole mission always was to have that customer experience and customer journey. We developed a very good B2B design software,
Yep.
which was paying us revenue.
Yep.
We saw nothing for the customer though. We found that even using our own design software, the numbers were all over, right? So there's no reason why a price for a system could be 2x of the market. So the customer is being gouged. We can't control it. It's a B2B SaaS. They can sell for anything on a SaaS platform, right? So there are a lot of these levers which we can't control. It's a SaaS platform. But we only control when a end customer has a way to analyze the outcomes data. And that's why we started the app. And that's why now when you go through the whole journey, you can see, well, am I really getting my savings of X or Y? So you're taking the whole mystery out of it. So there's no mystery anymore.
So
right?
would the homeowner be on a subscription-based model, or would
Yes.
it? Okay.
So the way it works is like you buy a system, it's $50 a year for the app, you're spending $20,000, so they pay 3 years upfront,
Okay.
and it's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
They can also have a free app from some manufacturer. It doesn't have all of this data.
Okay.
Manufacturer apps do not know the price of the system,
Yeah.
all your expected return, right? It's more of a hardware type of app. We add in the layer of financials and ROI. And the Series A question, so now that we have done that, we have so much data that we can see how the systems are doing across brands. We can guide also the topic of storage. I didn't talk about it. It's not just solar, it's solar, storage, charging. It's a whole nexus, right? So it's a very complex thing for a homeowner to keep track of. They're spending a lot of money on that. So
how did you market your product back in 2015 and 16 when you said it was kind of too early for you guys to come up with this, right?
yes. So luckily we were selling to the solar channel. So and having come out of it, we knew all the trade shows, we knew the distributors. So that's super important, like the access to market. And even till today we do trade shows. And right now we're doing a NAPSAP conference in Raleigh. We have 3 people there, very local trade associations. We're part of all the solar associations. Think of it as a very local marketing, and installers are also very local. They'll go to events and so on. So it's difficult. It's not like a national play. And most people outside the industry do not even know us.
So it's all about going to these kind of
Events.
conferences and networking.
Webinars too. We do a lot of online webinars, which is easy to do online.
And
Any
this,
question?
We have an online question. How do you figure out product market fit?
Yes, great question. Tough one. So my answer, if you asked me that 5 years ago, it would be how many active users do you have who are giving you your NPS score based numbers as a high number. It's a 6 out of 7. But that's a very tough definition, because if you have a new product, even to get them to use it is tough, let alone getting an NPS score. And the first version of a product, you're never going to get an engaged user. You may get some feedback. So I feel like the answer changes over time. The first version, a beta product, you have to be happy with just logins and use. There are tools out now like Pendo, which tell you by the minute who went in and did what. But now if you have a 5-year-old product and you're trying to do the next iteration, you're testing product market fit, I think there's so much data out there now. Time spent per page, activity and all that.
Regarding what you said about getting customers, you went to conferences and all that. So isn't the COGS too high for that, and then isn't that not scalable as you?
Well, so there's a marketing cost for any SaaS product.
Yeah.
It's the same in every industry. So B2B SaaS, unfortunately, sales and marketing is a big expense. And that's the key to your growth. And I think unless you do the first year has to be, 50, 60% of revenue, or even higher, I've seen some industries. And that's a model which you need to develop. What is the right number? It's different for every industry, so that you can recover it in 3 or 4 years. Because that's the only advantage you'll have, is we have no physical goods, we have no office space, we have people, and we have AWS and software. So you have to invest to get the market share. Marketing is our number 1 spend.
Okay.
right? Because that's the only way you can get to the customer.
So how many like trade shows or you would do in early days?
Yeah, so early days we do like 3 a year. We could only afford 2 the first year, then 3, only in the US and that to California. Now we're doing maybe 50 a year,
Okay.
right, in different countries. Like next month is Germany and Italy was last week, like really covering all the markets. Because there's no point having a product and not market it. Either your marketing strong or not be there at all. There's no ROI.
So were you able to like attract like good enough number of people in these like 3 trade shows
Yeah.
back then?
Yeah, for us trade shows worked. It's a different question on the ROI of a trade show. We
Right.
found that bigger is not necessarily better, and having a huge booth may not be the best outcome. Sometimes it's okay to have a small presence, but have training and other ways to reduce your budget and still get the users. So, but trade shows are very important in our industry because installation of solar is a very physical project, and not everyone is looking for software to help. So they go to a trade show where they're buying the next brand of solar panel or inverters or procurement. So the people who decide are there in the trade shows. You have to be there. You can't skip it. Question?
Can I ask another product question?
Yes.
I'm really interested in the consumer app. As you know, I'm going through the solar exploration
Yes.
for my home. With that app, is the primary focus about showing financial ROI and it's just kind of like financial navel gazing? Or do I have any ability to actually control things like, hey, I want to shift my energy usage of my water heater to this time of day,
Yeah.
or align any other types of energy uses in my house with the battery storage that I have?
Yeah. So it does have control now, but that's Q224. So the last 3 years, first we did savings, the basic ROI tracking. Then we went into consumption tracking. So we connect with the utility. If you live in the Bay Area, one click, you can connect to PG&E, and so you can see a live consumption data. So we're recreating your electric bill on the app with solar. So you don't need to look at your utility bill anymore. So then after that, we added storage. So in our state, the laws have changed where if you do not add storage to your solar, your savings is not as good. So we changed the rules. Export benefits have gone down, and that meant batteries have come. There are 100 different battery options now in the market. Prices have fallen, and the ROI of a solar battery system is much better today than a year ago. But you have to measure it. The guy was, let's say, spending 20 grand, now you're spending 30 grand on that problem. You're even more interested in ROI. Better be good return. And the batteries don't last 25 years, right? So batteries are like 10-year, 12-year warranty. So to your point, what's the next thing we did is predicting the battery life, charge levels across brands. And then the utilities started offering, the next thing was the discharge incentives. So on a hot summer day, if you are in Connecticut, Eversource will give you hundreds of dollars to discharge your battery to reduce the peak load. And it's called a VPP benefit. And that's picking up. So we have that. So that's the first little control. Are you ready for your discharge without your consent?
And you can control.
You can sign up. Yeah. You can.
API
API connections, yes. API connections. So we're still doing it through configuration, not like remote. So it's configured to discharge in a certain schedule which you approve.
Okay.
But the next stage is this. Next stage is you'll be able to, let's say you're going on a vacation and I don't need to get the grid to bill me. You go into a different mode, let the solar to charge your battery, you're more off grid. All those things are coming. The other very common problem we have is EVs. I've seen some here. So in California, we have now 40% of sales of new cars is electric. Last year was 1 million units sold, biggest ever. I know there's a lot of press about EVs in general, but it's 1 million units sold, first time, the biggest sale of EVs. And prices have come down. So guess what, there'll be more, right? When you get the EV, the dealer never tells you that the cost of charging is X. They don't even get into that conversation, right? So you're buying another $30,000 thing. First you already got your solar. Now you have another $30,000, $50,000 purchase. No one's telling you about your cost of charging. So they get their first bill, and that's a shock. And then they get the extension to their solar or a battery because they need more charge, right? So that's the other piece on the app, helping them understand the need for extra panels. So we're seeing that motion too. Yes.
Online question, how do you market a product when it's in beta phase?
Yeah, so B2B is different from B2C. B2B beta phases actually we found were free trials, giving companies an incentive to create new features together because we know the next thing is coming and we give you a special price. In return you have so many users on that new feature which you can only use for a while. That's something we found. But B2C stuff. So B2C, the app, we've gone through a whole journey the last 3 years, and to get homeowners to tell you what they really want is focus groups, closed door focus groups, paid focus groups early on is very important in my view. Not just the platforms that make you try things. There's quite a few of those, but actually have a room with closed doors and watch people use it, because the UX is so much more important for a homeowner app than a B2B. And then changing the product iteratively through data on your windows and figuring out the usage patterns fast enough so that you're on top of the customer, not behind. What we found is, like, if you have too many features on an app, you need to develop it with insights is unfortunately not met because you have only 1 or 2 good product managers and there's 6 features to track. So some features do not get pushed through well enough because there's so much work to do. So it goes back to your question of beta. Do you need a beta for every feature? So now what we do is on the app, even feature betas are happening. So a new feature would only go to about 50 homes and we get that feedback instead of the whole thing. But that's a long answer.
Question about, you were talking about on the journey to product market fit, you made mistakes along the way. Were there any specific mistakes that stand out to you that were like funny stories of wildly incorrect assumptions you made, or things that some of those dramatic
Oh, there's so many.
mistakes?
There's quite a few. I mean, we made mistakes everywhere. Product market. So we made mistakes in launching in new markets. So the ones that worked out we are proud of, like South Africa, we got a client in 2020 during COVID that ended up having over 100,000 revenue for us now, last few years. We've never been to South Africa in my life. I've never been. Nobody in our team. It worked. So I would say it's a success. But there are 3 other countries I don't want to name where we wasted time. And there was no need for it, right? So we went with the client and they started, but then we thought it would be big. So this is the bet you make on certain clients almost, not just the country. And when you're a young startup with no big team, you still have to do it. All the venture investors would tell you, you should never go outside the US until you get to Series A. If we followed that advice, we wouldn't exist. So you have to judge for yourself. I think the world has changed, and for software companies, if you can go outside without any extra cost, you're actually scaling. It's no longer it is true it's a little defocus in terms of your time, but we had a 24-hour team anyways, so that helped us. I can go into many more offline.
Okay.
I don't want to upset our team.
Okay.
Sorry, you had a question.
So kind of going off of that, so you mentioned the 3 countries. Was it because of like government regulations, or was it maybe the client that you felt didn't work out and you would like to maybe go back?
Yeah.
Touch on that.
I'll give you a great example because I'm from India, right, originally, and I've left India 26 years ago. It was the hardest market to sell into. The same product which is used everywhere. And we landed the biggest solar developer, by the way, eventually. So the big guys like Tata Power is different from a small installer. But the cost of selling to a small company was very high. And return on sales wasn't there. So it's really the economics of the country, right? How important do they value a product? In certain markets, the price of solar in India is 1/3 of California, same product, same hardware. So like in Germany, it's half of California, India is 1/3 of California. So the value of transparency in pricing is lower in India. It's a commodity. It's like every home should have it now almost. It's that level, right? So the app is actually more powerful there because these things don't work. It's getting cheaper, but they don't work often. So you need to know when it's about to fail. It's not the design tool. So like the platform covers many value props, but some countries we didn't find a good fit. So I want to talk about one last area, which is I think 2 minutes left, and I didn't talk about it much, which is we talked about product market fit, a little bit on funding. The last topic is the team. So I think that the most important determinant of your success, besides having a product and having some funding, is whom are you working with? Are you hiring the right people? And it starts with your co-founder, having the line vision. We were lucky because Anasij and I, we've been doing it for 9 years. We would have done nothing else. But that's kind of rare, right? And I've seen many companies where the alignment isn't right, that leads to suboptimal outcomes. And then between rounds, when you change team members, it's very difficult to recover. So watch out for that team formation. Not just the co-founders, like the next level, whom are you hiring? We went through a lot of changes in the sales team. I think someone asked the question on, when do you hire the right VP of sales? Well, I think the first few years you are the VP of sales. There's no other VP of sales. And unless you have a Series A, probably better not to have one because they don't really know what to do better than you. So you'll be on the calls with them anyways. Mm-hmm. So we learned those lessons. So team formation, sales is super important. Product, you already have an edge usually when you're at that stage, but sales is super important. So pick the right people early. Marketing is super important. And yeah, I think we're out of time, so I want to pause. Is there any other questions? It went by fast. No other questions? Great, thank you for having me. And there's so much more I could talk about after the event. Just stop by. My LinkedIn is somewhere on the profile, so please connect with me. I stopped doing business cards because it's the new age, right? It's all LinkedIn. So just connect and I'll help you out. Thank you all.